It starts with the sound. Before you even see the wall of bodies, you hear the collective hum. It is a low-frequency static, a chaotic mix of footsteps, overlapping conversations, engines, and the shuffling of fabric against fabric. And the moment that sound hits your ears, your body reacts. It isn't a conscious choice. It is a biological switch. Your heart rate ticks up, not by much, but enough to notice. Your palms get slightly damp. Your eyes stop looking at the scenery and start scanning for gaps in the human wall. You are not just walking down a street or entering a venue anymore. You are entering a combat zone. This is the visceral reality of the person who hates crowded places. It is not a preference. It is not a quirk. It is a physical rejection of density. To the people around you, the crowd is just a setting. It's just Saturday at the market or rush hour or a concert. They move through it like water, unbothered, bumping shoulders, standing comfortably in lines where they can smell the shampoo of the person in front of them. They seem immune to the friction, but for you, the crowd is a violation. Every accidental brush of a stranger's arm against yours feels like an electric shock. Every loud laugh from a group of tourists feels like a spike being driven into your focus. You feel the heat radiating off other human bodies. You smell the mixture of perfumes, sweat, exhaust, and food, and it makes you feel cornered. You find yourself walking faster, weaving through the gaps, holding your breath, your muscles coiled tight, possessed by a single driving thought. I need to get out of here. We often dismiss this reaction as being antisocial or having a bad temper. You might be known among your friends as the one who hates waiting in lines, the one who refuses to go to the popular bar on a Friday night, or the one who gets strangely irritable the moment you step into a busy grocery store. They might tell you to relax or go with the flow, but they don't understand that for you, there is no flow. There is only obstruction. Today, in this video, we are going to dissect the psychology and neurology of this reaction. We are going to look at why your brain perceives a crowd not as a gathering of people, but as a threat to your survival. We are going to explore the concept of parapersonal space, the evolutionary roots of crowd anxiety, and why your rage in a traffic jam or a packed subway car is actually a sign of a hyperactive spatial intelligence. If you have ever felt your mood disintegrate the moment you walked into a packed room, or if you plan your entire life around avoiding peak hours, this is for you. Let's begin by validating the physical sensation because it is real. When you are in a crowd, you are subjecting your brain to a level of sensory processing that is evolutionary unprecedented. For 99% of human history, we lived in small bands. We saw maybe 30, 40, 50 people a day. We had miles of open space. To be surrounded by 1,000 strangers, all moving unpredictably, all within touching distance, is a biologically unnatural state. For most people, the brain has a filtering mechanism that dulls this reality. They have a high threshold for what psychologists call sensory gating. They can block out the irrelevant noise. They can ignore the fact that a stranger is standing 6 inches from their face. Their brain says, this is safe, ignore it. But your brain? Your brain has a different setting. Your sensory gates are wide open. You are tracking the movement of every person in your periphery. You are calculating trajectories to avoid collisions. You are processing the volume of the music, the crying baby 3 aisles over, the flashing lights of the advertisements. You are performing a high-speed, complex spatial calculus every single second. This is why you don't just feel annoyed in a crowd. You feel exhausted. You feel crowd fatigue. It's a specific type of tiredness that hits you behind the eyes. It makes you snappy. It makes you irrational. You might be the kindest, most patient person in the world in a one-on-one setting, but put you in a packed airport terminal and you feel a sudden, dark flash of rage at a family walking too slowly in front of you. You look at the back of their heads and you feel a genuine fury. This is not a character defect. This is a threat response. To understand this, we have to talk about a fascinating neurological concept called parapersonal space, or PPS. This is the area of space immediately surrounding your body that your brain treats as an extension of yourself. It's an invisible bubble. If a fly buzzes into this space, you swat it without thinking. If a ball is thrown into this space, you flinch. Research shows that people vary wildly in the size and rigidity of this bubble. For some people, the ones who love mosh pits and packed clubs, their PPS is flexible and small. They don't mind the intrusion, But for you, the person who hates crowds, your parapersonal space is likely larger and more rigid. It is a defensive perimeter. When a stranger steps into that bubble on the subway, in an elevator, in a queue, your brain's parietal lobe fires the same neurons it would fire if you were being physically touched. Even if they aren't touching you, the proximity registers as a tactile sensation. You can feel them standing there. So, being in a crowd is for you the neurological equivalent of being poked and prodded thousands of times an hour. Your brain is screaming, violation, violation, violation. It triggers a low-level fight or flight response. Your cortisol spikes. Your adrenaline starts to drip. You're literally preparing for combat because your brain interprets the loss of space as a loss of safety. And yet, we live in a world that is obsessed with density. We measure the success of an event by how packed it is. We flock to the hottest restaurants where the tables are inches apart. We idealize the bustling city center. We are told that the energy of the crowd is something we should crave. So you learn to mask. You learn to suppress the panic. You force yourself to go to the festival. You force yourself to stand in the mosh pit. You force yourself to navigate the Christmas shopping rush. And on the outside, you look fine. You're standing there, holding your drink, smiling. But inside, there's a countdown clock running. You are managing a shrinking resource of patience. You are wondering, how much longer do I have to endure this before I can breathe? This creates a hidden identity. You become the master of the exit strategy. You are the person who always knows where the door is. You are the person who prefers to stand near the wall rather than in the center of the room. You are the person who drives separately so you aren't trapped by someone else's schedule. You are constantly micromanaging your environment to maintain a sliver of autonomy. But deep down you wonder, am I missing out? You see photos of people in Times Square on New Year's Eve, or at Coachella, or in the crowded streets of Tokyo, and they look euphoric. They look like they are part of something greater than themselves. And you look at your own reaction, the dread, the avoidance, and you wonder if you are simply incapable of that kind of collective joy. You wonder if you are broken because you prefer the edge of the map to the center of the action. Let's go deeper into where this comes from, because this aversion to crowds isn't just about the present moment. It's often rooted in a deep, learned association between density and danger. Developmentally, think back to your childhood. Were you a child who was easily overwhelmed? When you were dragged to the state fair or the busy mall, did you hold your parents' hand a little too tight? Did you feel small? For a child, a crowd is a forest of legs. It is a place of disorientation. You can't see the horizon. You can't see the way out. The noise is deafening. If you got separated even for a moment, the sheer mass of humanity wasn't a source of excitement. It was a source of terror. It was the monster that could swallow you whole. Some children grow out of this fear. They learn that the crowd is benign. But for others, especially those with high sensory sensitivity or a strong need for control, that early imprint sticks. The crowd remains a place where you lose your agency. In a crowd, you cannot move at your own pace. You are forced to march to the rhythm of the collective. You are blocked, shoved, and redirected. As you grow older, this manifests as a fierce desire for autonomy. The person who hates crowds is almost always a person who values independence. You hate the crowd not just because it's loud, but because it is inefficient. Watch yourself the next time you are in a busy pedestrian area. What makes you angry? It's the slowness. It's the unpredictability. It's the group of four walking side by side blocking the sidewalk. It's the person who stops abruptly at the top of the escalator to check their phone. Why does this infuriate you? Because they are impediments to your will. You have a destination. You have a speed. And the crowd is an obstacle course that prevents you from moving through the world on your own terms. Your rage is actually a frustrated desire for freedom. You want to move through life cleanly, sharply, and efficiently, and the crowd forces you to shuffle. This feeling of impeded agency is critical to understanding the hidden pattern. It's not just about the people, it's about the physics of the situation. Psychologists studying crowd dynamics have found that when density reaches a certain point, roughly 6 people per square meter, individuals lose the ability to control their own movement. You become a particle in a fluid wave. For someone who values self-determination, this physical loss of control is psychologically terrifying. It triggers a primal claustrophobia, not just of the body, but of the will. Now, let's look at how this plays out as you move into adulthood, where the stakes get higher and the crowds get denser. This manifests most brutally in the architecture of your daily life, because unless you live in a remote cabin, you cannot completely opt out of the human swarm. You have to work, you have to commute, and you have to consume. Consider the morning commute. For the average person, a crowded train or a jammed highway is a nuisance. It is an annoyance. But for you, it is a sensory assault that depletes your battery before the day has even begun. If you take public transport, you are forced into a violation of that parapersonal space we talked about earlier. You are pressed against strangers. You are smelling their breath, feeling their body heat, hearing the tinny leak of music from their headphones. Your brain is working overtime to suppress the fight or flight response. You are rigid. You are guarding your pockets, your bag, your body. You are hyper vigilant. By the time you arrive at your office, you have already run a psychological marathon. You are starting your workday in a state of ego depletion. You have used up your willpower just trying not to scream in the subway car. And then you enter the modern workplace, which has been disastrously designed for people like you. The open plan office is essentially a crowd that you are forced to sit in for 8 hours a day. There are no walls. There is no visual privacy. You can see the movement of 20 different people in your peripheral vision. For a brain that tracks trajectory and movement as potential threats, this is a nightmare. You cannot focus because your sensory system is constantly flagging movement. Someone stood up. Someone is walking past your desk. Someone is laughing in the corner. You aren't just doing your job. You are constantly assessing the environment. This is why you might find yourself exhausted by 3 p.m., not from the intellectual difficulty of your tasks, but from the spatial fatigue of existing in a fishbowl. This leads to the development of what we can call the curated life of avoidance. As an adult, you begin to make choices that look like preferences but are actually defense mechanisms. You become the person who is obsessed with off-peak hours. You are the one doing your grocery shopping at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday because the aisles are empty. You are the one who goes to the gym at 5 a.m. or 9 p.m. to avoid the rush. You check Google Maps not just for directions, but to see the popular times graph, and if the bar is red, you simply don't go. You start to decline invitations, not because you don't want to see your friends, not because you don't like the event, but because the logistical cost of the crowd outweighs the benefit of the experience. Your friends say, "Let's go to the street food festival." You picture the lines, you picture the lack of seating, you picture the struggle to walk 10 feet without bumping into someone, and you say, "I think I'll pass." Over time, this creates a reputation. You become the homebody, or the flake, or the high-maintenance friend. People stop inviting you to the big events, the concerts, the parades, the rallies. And while a part of you is relieved, another part of you feels a sting. You feel your world shrinking. You look at the map of your city and realize that there are vast swathes of it. The trendy districts, the popular markets, the tourist hubs, that are effectively no-go zones for you. You are living in a fraction of the world available to you simply because you cannot pay the sensory tax required to enter the rest of it. In relationships, this dynamic can become a minefield. It is very common for opposites to attract. The person who hates crowds often falls for the person who loves the energy of the pack. Your partner wants to go to Disney World. They want to go to Times Square on New Year's Eve. They want to be in the middle of the mosh pit. To them, the crowd is excitement. It is vibes. They feed off the collective effervescence. You try to go along with it because you love them. You brave the airport security line, which is its own special circle of hell for you, and you brave the theme park. But halfway through the day, you hit the wall. The wall is the moment your sensory buffer reaches zero. You stop talking. Your face goes blank. You might become snappy or irritable. You physically recoil if your partner tries to hold your hand, not because you don't love them, but because you are touched out. Your skin feels raw. You have been bumped into by strangers 500 times in the last 3 hours, and you cannot handle one more tactile input. Your partner asks, "What's wrong? Are you having a bad time?" And you can't explain that you aren't having a bad time in the emotional sense. You are having a system failure in the physiological sense. You aren't sad. You are saturated. You need a dark room and silence immediately. This often leads to conflict. You are accused of being a killjoy. You are accused of ruining the mood. And the tragedy is you start to believe them. You look at the thousands of other people in the park, smiling, eating ice cream, seemingly unbothered by the crushing density, and you think, what is wrong with me? Why can't I just be normal? Why is everything such a struggle? This brings us to the internal conflict. This is the war that happens inside your head. Because here is the nuance that people miss. Hating crowds does not mean you hate humanity. This is the great misconception. You might love people, you might love deep conversation, you might be incredibly empathetic. In fact, many people who hate crowds are empaths, people who absorb the emotions of others. Imagine being an empath in a stadium of 50,000 people. You aren't just feeling your own excitement, you are feeling the collective, chaotic energy of the mass. You are feeling the aggression of the drunk guy 3 rows back. You are feeling the anxiety of the parent who lost their kid. You are feeling the sheer, overwhelming volume of human desire and frustration. It is a tsunami of data, so you are torn. You have the fear of missing out, FOMO, just like everyone else. You want to see the Mona Lisa. You want to see your favorite band play live. You want to be part of the cultural moment. But your body refuses to pay the price of admission. You live in the tension between the desire for connection and the repulsion of proximity. You want to be with people, but you don't want to be among them. You want community, but you don't want the swarm. This conflict often leads to a strange, paradoxical sense of guilt and judgment. You stand on the edge of a crowd watching them, and you feel a mix of superiority and envy. On one hand, you judge them. You look at the herd shuffling along, eating, sweating, consuming, and you feel a sense of disdain. You think, how can they live like this? Look at them, like cattle. It is a defense mechanism. You devalue what you cannot tolerate. But on the other hand, you envy them. You envy their ease. You envy the thickness of their skin. You watch a group of friends laughing in a packed bar, oblivious to the noise, oblivious to the heat, and you wish just for a moment that you could turn off your radar. You wish you could just float. You wish you didn't have to calculate the location of every exit. But you can't. Your radar is always on, and that is not something you can just wish away. So let's stop the self-judgment for a moment and move into validation. We need to stop pretending that your reaction is wrong or broken. We need to look at this through the lens of evolutionary psychology. From a survival standpoint, your reaction to the crowd is actually the more logical one. In the ancestral environment, a sudden, dense gathering of mammals usually meant one of two things: a migration or a stampede. It was a high-stakes situation. It meant resources were about to become scarce, or a predator was driving the herd together. It required hypervigilance. Your brain is retaining an ancient wisdom. Density equals unpredictability, and unpredictability is dangerous. Furthermore, there is the century theory. In early human tribes, survival depended on having different types of nervous systems. You needed the warriors who could charge into chaos. But you also needed the sentries, the ones who stayed on the perimeter, the ones who were sensitive to the snap of a twig, the ones who noticed the subtle shift in the wind. You are the descendant of the sentries. Your nervous system is designed for the periphery, not the center. You are designed to watch the horizon, not to be trampled in the mosh pit. But the modern world has been redesigned in a way that makes your specific evolutionary advantage a disadvantage. We don't need sentries in a shopping mall. We need consumers. We don't need distinct individuals in a subway. We need efficient cargo. The world has been engineered for density. It has been engineered for the person with the high sensory threshold. So when you feel that rage bubble up in a slow-moving line, it's not because you are a bad person. It's because you are a biological instrument built for precision, forced to live in a world of blunt force. You are a Stradivarius violin being used as a hammer. Of course you are out of tune. We have to acknowledge the grief in this too. There is a grief in realizing that there are certain experiences you simply cannot enjoy the way others do. You might never enjoy a music festival. You might never enjoy the chaos of a busy market in Marrakech. And that's okay. But you have to let go of the fantasy that one day, if you just try hard enough or drink enough, you will love it. You won't. And forcing yourself to endure it only leads to the cycle of burnout and recovery that eats up half your life. The goal is not to numb yourself to the crowd. The goal is to understand the mechanism so you can stop hating yourself for it. You have to move from the question, what is wrong with me, to the question, how do I navigate this? This leads us to the pivotal moment of reframing. We need to shift how you view your relationship with space and agency. You are not antisocial. You are spatially selective. You have a high need for what we can call environmental autonomy. Think of your energy like a bandwidth connection. In a quiet room, you have high bandwidth available for thoughts, feelings, and genuine connection. In a crowd, 90% of your bandwidth is being hijacked by your threat detection system to track the bodies around you. You only have 10% left for actually enjoying the moment. So, when you avoid crowds, you aren't avoiding life. You are protecting your bandwidth. You are ensuring that when you do engage with the world, you have the resources to actually be present. You are choosing quality of interaction over quantity of stimulation. This reframing allows you to stop seeing your avoidance as weakness. It is strategy. It is resource management. Now, how do we transfer this ownership to your daily life? How do we move from being a victim of the crowd to a navigator of it? It starts with a simple but radical concept: the permission to exit. Many of us stay in crowded situations long past our breaking point because we don't want to be rude. We stand in the uncomfortable conversation. We stay at the packed party where we can't hear ourselves think. We endure the crushing line because everyone else is doing it. Ownership means realizing that you always have the right to leave. You have the right to step out of the line. You have the right to walk out of the concert if you can't breathe. You have the right to say to your friends, "This is too much for me. I'm going to meet you at the quiet place down the street." When you know you can leave, the panic often subsides. The panic comes from the feeling of entrapment. If you build escape hatches into your life, knowing where the car is parked, having your own ride, having a pre-agreed signal with your partner, the crowd becomes less terrifying because it is no longer a prison. It is just a place you are visiting with the key in your pocket. This also means embracing what we can call strategic timing. There is a secret world that exists in the off hours. The city at 6 a.m. on a Sunday is a completely different city than it is at 2 p.m. on a Saturday. The museum on a Tuesday morning is a sanctuary. On a Saturday afternoon, it is a nightmare. Instead of fighting the crowd, you outsmart it. You become a chrono hacker, you live in the temporal margins, and there is a profound beauty in those margins. You get to see the world without the static. You get to see the architecture, the art, the nature, without the blockage of 1,000 selfie sticks. You stop apologizing for this. When someone asks why you don't want to go to the opening night, you don't say, "I'm weird." You say, "I don't enjoy the density. I prefer to go when I can actually see the art." You frame it as a preference for depth over hype. Finally, we move toward the healing orientation. This is about finding peace in a crowded world without locking yourself away forever. Healing means recognizing the difference between crowds and community. You can reject the crowd and still embrace the community. You can love humanity one-on-one or in small groups or in controlled settings. You don't have to merge with the blob to be part of the human race. It means cultivating spaces of radical openness. If you hate crowds, your nervous system likely craves the opposite: the horizon, the ocean, the empty field, the desert. You need to feed your eyes with distance. You need to give your proprioceptive system a break. Make time for the places where you can see for miles. These are not just nice views for you, they are medicine. They reset your depth perception. They remind your brain that you are not trapped. You also need to practice sensory decompression. After you have been forced to endure a crowd, because sometimes life demands it, like at a wedding or a graduation, you need a protocol for recovery. You don't just come home and immediately start cooking dinner or scrolling social media. You need 20 minutes of silence. You need low light. You need heavy blankets. You need to signal to your amygdala that the threat is gone. You need to manually turn off the alarm before you can return to being a partner, a parent, or a friend. Ultimately, the closure we are aiming for is not a life of total isolation, but a life of curated connection. You realize that you are not missing out on the real experience by avoiding the crowd. The crowd is often the barrier to the real experience. The crowd is the noise. You are seeking the signal. By choosing the quiet path, the side street, the early morning, the empty table in the corner, you are choosing a life of clarity. You are choosing to engage with the world when it is calm enough to hear yourself think. You are the custodian of the quiet. In a world that is shouting to be heard, shoving to be seen, and rushing to be first, you are the one standing on the periphery, watching, breathing, and seeing the things that everyone else is too busy bumping into each other to notice. Your aversion to the crowd is not a weakness. It is a demand for space. It is a demand for breath. It is a demand to exist as an individual, not just a particle in the mass. And that is a valid way to walk through this world. You don't have to follow the herd. You can find your own path. And usually the empty path is the one with the best view. So take the long way home. Take the empty street. Enjoy the silence. You have earned it. We must also talk about the specific paradox that haunts the person who hates crowds, the profound loneliness of being surrounded by people. There is a misconception that loneliness is the result of physical isolation, but you know the truth. You know that the sharpest, most aching form of loneliness does not happen when you are sitting alone in your room. It happens when you are standing in a room full of people who are talking over each other, and you feel completely invisible. In a crowd, connection is often diluted. It becomes a performance of connection rather than the thing itself. People are shouting to be heard, posturing to be seen. The interactions are transactional and fleeting. For a person who craves depth, this is not just boring, it is isolating. You look around at the sea of faces and realize that in this mass of humanity, you are less known and less seen than you are when you are with just one other person. The crowd offers anonymity, yes, but it also offers erasure. This is why your aversion is actually a protective mechanism for your sense of self. When you step away from the crowd, you are refusing to be erased. You are refusing to become just another body in the room. You are holding onto your identity with a grip that is fierce and necessary. And consider the role you play when you are on the periphery. We spoke of the sentry, but let's look at what that means in the modern world. Because you are not in the center of the action, you are the one who actually sees the action. The person in the middle of the dance floor sees only flashing lights and the person in front of them. But you, standing at the edge near the exit or watching from the balcony, you see the whole room. You see the dynamics shifting. You see the couple fighting in the corner. You see the person looking for a friend. You see the architecture of the space. You are the observer. And the observer is a vital role in human society. We need the people who stand back. We need the people who are not swept away by the collective hysteria or the collective joy. We need the people who keep their feet on the ground and their eyes on the horizon. Your distance gives you perspective. It gives you a clarity that the participants lack. Writers, photographers, sociologists, and artists. So many of them are people who hate crowds. Why? Because to describe the world, you must stand slightly apart from it. You cannot describe the wave when you are drowning in it. So, when you feel that guilt creeping in, that feeling that you are missing out on the party, remind yourself that you are simply watching the party from a different vantage point. You are witnessing it. And witnessing is an active state. It is a form of participation that is quiet but powerful. There is also a hidden intimacy in your approach to the world that needs to be celebrated. Because you reject the mass experience, you likely cherish the micro experience. Think about how you are with your close friends. Because you don't waste your energy on 500 acquaintances, you pour that preserved energy into the 3 or 4 people who actually matter. Your friendships are likely deeper, more solid, and more enduring. You are the person who remembers the birthday. You are the person who notices the slight change in tone in a text message. You are the person who shows up when things get quiet and dark, not just when things are loud and bright. You trade breadth for depth. And in a world that is spreading itself incredibly thin, that depth is a rare and precious resource. You are not antisocial. You are selectively social. You are a curator of human connection. You treat your attention like gold, spending it only where it matters, rather than throwing it like confetti into the wind of a crowded room. This is the final integration of your identity. You stop seeing your need for space as a limitation, and you start seeing it as a filter. It filters out the noise. It filters out the superficial. It filters out the chaotic. And what is left? What is left when you strip away the crowd? What remains is the essential, the quiet moments, the true conversations, the clear thoughts, the relationships that can withstand silence, the spaces where you can breathe. This is not a small life. It is a concentrated life. It is a distilled life. And it is a life that is entirely, unapologetically yours.